Welcome back to another Inside Another Month, the month of May. And we are starting with a very difficult topic. I've touched this topic several times, but this week I'm going to talk about something that AUSIT has recently released and give my opinion about this. I'm talking about pricing. Why there is so much taboo and pricing ended up being the big elephant in the room of the translation industry. I'm going to really debunk this. I'm going to tell you my honest opinion. I'm going to tell you what I have been doing for almost 20 years and what I think about all this. So let's talk pricing. So let's talk pricing. Let's talk about a very useful tool that AUSIT has recently released for its members and debunk this idea of talking and price fixing, etc., etc. So recently AUSIT published a guide for members to calculate their pricing. Well, you know me, you know I have my courses, my course and my mentoring program, and part of that mentoring program is also helping you to calculate your pricing. So this is something that's been around for a very long time, and quite frankly, I think it's a very useful tool. It was welcomed, of course, but there were still some concerned members about discussing pricing because they were afraid it could be considered price fixing. In fact, over the years, every single time that pricing comes to mind, there's always this price fixing idea attached to it. So, this is my opinion. It's solely my opinion. This is what I think about it. And the reason I think it is definitely not price fixing, and it is important that we actually do this. This has been a long discussion and one I feel very strongly about. And you know that I've been doing videos about this, and I made a few videos about this. I touched this topic on my course as well because I think it is important to touch this. Price fixing is when all practitioners or every single provider on the same industry set the same price for their services or products. We have recently seen years ago that there was concern about Woolies and Coles doing that in Australia. Sometimes there is on the news that a particular company has done price fixing with some other, and sometimes that happens. And obviously that is illegal, kills competition, and it's illegal in Australia. You cannot do price fixing. And I understand that, and obviously I don't agree with that. So that's it. So what it means, if price fixing is everyone sets the same price or a fixed price for those services, for their services. Discussing price, however, and what is fair in the market, it's not price fixing, because each practitioner, each provider is still free to charge whatever they think is fair for them. Talking about what is the price that is currently charged on the market, etc., etc., and even what AUSIT did, creating a guideline so you can actually know all the components you should add when you calculate your pricing. It's not price fixing. AUSIT is not telling you price yourself at this rate. It's just giving you a guideline. This is what, and many of our associations and many associations around the world do surveys, even pros. You can declare, obviously you put your rates in pros, and then if you are a paid member, you can consult the average that is charged per language pair on pros. So it's a guideline. It's something that you see, oh, this is what the market is doing. This is what this is the average. What do I think is fair? And then you have the guide with all the components that you need to add in order to create your price, which are your expenses, your association expenses, your electricity bill, your memberships, everything. And then you have to count the days that you work, you have to count your billable hours, your unbillable hours, everything comes together, your super, if you are in Australia, and all of that, it's going to calculate the amount that you need to cover your expenses. And of course, you need to take a salary for yourself. You need to take some money for yourself. And then you will get your pricing or a calculation, a average or a broader calculation of your pricing through there. Having a guideline, you can still see, all right, this is what the market is doing, this is the average in the market, and then you can calculate, is this fair, is this a good option, am I going to go for this, what am I going to do? At least it gives you the alternative, or the opportunity rather, of knowing what you're doing and making an informed decision. It's not price fixing. You are not setting the same prices as your colleagues. You are simply knowing what's the average in the market, and you having a calculator, you having a tool that tells you all the components you should add in order to ascertain your price, to obtain the price for yourself, and then you go from there. So this is something I really feel strongly about it. I've been talking about this for many years. I don't think this is price fixing. I actually think it was a great idea from AUSIT to do that, because it's a massive help, especially to our new translators. So making this the big elephant in the room creates a situation where practitioners, especially the young ones, especially people that are now coming into the profession, feel very uncomfortable about setting prices and sometimes not knowing how to do it at all. And I think that's even when you take courses, and this is not discussed broadly, and I think it should. It should. I'm not saying that when you take your course that they should tell you exactly what you should do. No, that would be price fixing. That would be telling you, okay, this is your price. You're starting now, you should do this pricing. No, that it's not at all what I'm saying, and that it's not at all what should be done. But I believe that something like this guide that AUSIT now provided for its members, something like this that helps the practitioner to set their own pricing and understand what it's needed to get to a fair pricing, I think that is in order. That is definitely in order. Having a discussion and a good market research is helpful to understand the market trends, to understand demand, to understand offer, to understand what the market is doing. It is important to know all these things in order to be part of that market. If you don't know anything, if you make everything a big elephant in the room and you just make it a taboo and you don't want to talk about it, it's not going to help anybody. Another essential aspect of this discussion is to understand how to set the pricing. understand what you need, all the components you need to add in order to have a fair number. And then you go from there. Not just the market or the competition. Just setting a price. Okay, everyone is setting $100. I'm going to set them $100. Just like that. Of course, that's not a good idea, because you don't know your expenses, you don't know what you need, you don't know what would be, if that price would even be fair. Or going, for example, to an association or some other body overseas and see a guideline from overseas that tells you this is the price. You convert into your own currency. Would that be fair for you? Would that be fair in your own country? Because I tell you what, if you are dealing with overseas rates, it might be totally different from Australia. We have a very high cost of living. We have a very high expenses. And of course, our wages are sometimes above the rest of the world, or most parts of the world. So we cannot compare. You need to compare within your country. And this is very important. Yes, it's important to do competition, and talking about pricing is not killing competition, but it's also important, essential, I would say pivotal, that you understand all the components you need to take into account to create your own rates. That is, essential. You work to make a living. Your price has to reflect that. That is something I think is... Now, mentoring for future generations, and I do that, and when I talk to my mentee, discussing this topic and helping the future generation of translators set their prices with confidence, I think is pivotal for the survival of our industry. Because as a mentor, I think it's my duty to help my colleagues. I know how hard it was for me when I started, totally in the dark, and having this issue with this being the big elephant in the room, the big taboo that no one wanted to talk about. And I know how hard it was. So if I can make it a little simpler for my colleagues that are now starting their businesses and are now starting in this profession, I'm obviously up for it. I'm obviously up for it, because I think it is very important that we do so. It's important. We currently have an overworked, underpaid sector where we see practitioners leaving our profession every day. We can't blame it all on AI. Let's face it, we cannot. Although we all know it had a very negative effect in our sector, but we cannot blame it all on it. It's not. We need to talk openly about these issues so we can overcome them. And pricing is one of the big issues in our industry. If everyone understands how price themselves accordingly, how to price themselves fairly, I think a lot of things would go better for the sector. But if we are living in secrecy, I think that's not a really good option. As a mentor, I always talk to my mentees about pricing, always. Most importantly, they should understand their value. That is the most important part of setting your pricing, is understanding your value, the value that you add to your clients when you translate their documents. So they don't underquote themselves or undervalue themselves. This is essential, and as a mentor is something that I make sure that I tell all my mentees, because I think it is very important to know. It is important to guide them so they know all the components they need to take into account when setting their price and have their fair price list. Not the fair price list for me, not the fair price list for the colleague that works down the road, the fair price list for themselves. And if they know all the components they need to take into account, if they know what are the market trends, what are the average charges, they can do an informed decision and price themselves accordingly. I think this is a positive for everyone. This document by AUSIT does that. It's great because it guides people through that process. The price guide is just that, a guide. You are free to set whatever price you want, whatever price you think is fair for yourself. But if you have that solid guideline for you to look at, you can easily do the job because you see the trends, you see what's on offer, and then you can just, adjust it according to your own needs, according to what you think is fair for yourself, according to the market that you're working with, because sometimes you may see in the guideline might be a general guideline, but if you work, for example, in a very specific niche, chances are you may set a price above that because, of course, the smaller your niche, the more premium that niche becomes. It's something like that. You need to have this understanding so you have confidence to deal with this problem, which end up not being a problem at all if it's actually tackled and discussed openly and fairly. You can easily set up your pricing and be just a part of your business, just a normal part of your business. No one can set up a business without setting up a price list, setting up prices that they're going to charge for their services or goods. It's a common and a very healthy practice on every business. Every business has to do it. So why does the translation industry create a big elephant in the room for this when it shouldn't be, quite frankly? So this is why I decided to talk about this today. We need to discuss these issues. We need to know what it is involved in making our pricing, so we price ourselves adequately and we price ourselves fairly. Most of all, fairly. Today, I hope you like this insider today, and I hope it really helped people understand what price fixing is and what a simple discussion of issues is, because if we really simplify things, if we really and let's face it, AUSIT would not publish something that they knew was going to be illegal. And we have plenty of lawyers involved with AUSIT. They are members of AUSIT. And of course, if that was something that was illegal, they would be the first ones to advise AUSIT against it. So, of course, it's not illegal. We just need to really see things and understand the complexity of things, and quite frankly, in this case, I don't really think it's complex. I just think that this taboo business has made it complex, has made it difficult, because it's been created a taboo around it, has been created this secrecy about it that doesn't need to be there. We can be competitive with each other. We can have our own pricing. We are entitled to charge whatever we want for our services, whatever we think is fair. But sometimes we cannot, or especially those coming into the profession, they cannot ascertain what's fair because they don't have a guide. They don't have a guide to guide them through the process. And I think giving them those opportunities, giving them the opportunity of having that guide and having that help, I think is important. Also, I discussed that in my course that is available at my school, Updated Words Learning, and of course through my mentoring program. I'll leave the link to my mentoring program where you can have the course and our weekly meetings where we discuss things like, for example, pricing and otherwise. And of course, you can have also special webinars about specific things like creating a website or SEO, things more specific, creating your own tools, etc., etc. So I'll leave the link below so you can, if you want, join in and come with me in this journey and let me guide you through the process of starting a business as a translator. And if you have any suggestions of anything that you would like me to talk about in these insiders, if you have any questions, please leave me a comment below. I would be very happy to answer you and obviously accommodate those topics and create an insider about them. And of course, put a like on the video and subscribe to the channel with a little click on the bell so you get a notification of a new insider every week. Before I go, I would like to thank you all for watching and I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.